Howdy Smyth Performance Jeep Cherokee Ute Builders. Man, that's a mouthful every time I say that. If I say Beetle, I apologize. My brain is programmed to say Beetle. But today we are talking about the Grand Cherokee Ute Kit. So I gotta admit, I'm really bad about getting distracted with other stuff I'm curious about as I'm building something. So I kind of got ahead of myself, but in the long run it'll pay off, because sometimes you find that thing that as you're bolting the bed together, that's the example today, as you're bolting the bed together, if you do a certain thing, it makes doing the interior easier later. So as I'm going, I'm always kind of thinking about stuff, but today we're going to talk about a couple other things that are completely unrelated to what I was supposed to be doing today, but I got excited about it. There's 3 or 4 little things I figured out, or I'm going to try, I'm experimenting with. I don't have the complete answer to all of them, but I can come back and edit this later. I want to get it filmed. I want to get it out there for the guys that are fixing to build. And one of these things is, as you're putting the bed walls in, I want to show you. It's just a simple little thing. You could probably figure it out on your own, but let me throw the idea out and it may help. So, as usual, I'm going to take the phone off and we're going to go zoom in behind the driver's seat where I've been playing with a couple of things. And I'm going to show you a couple of things, a couple ideas that seem to be working. I'm going to throw them out there. I hate it when a video starts and you don't know what you're looking at, so I'm trying to always start from somewhere that you can see where we're going, and then we'll go look in so you don't get lost. Where I'm really at with this is the right hand inner fender is in and bolted in, and the left hand I'm working on. So tip number 1, you can use your floor panels to help you check your square. I did it by accident once on a Beetle, and now that's kind of my standard procedure, because that big sheet being square really helps you. And it's nice to know where you're at before you start bolting or gluing or riveting stuff down. So, tip number 1, just throw it in there as you're positioning your inner fender liners, or even the first time you mock it all up, because you really need to mock it up with those in. And that floor is a great piece. And then you can do little things like I've done here. You know, I stuck a couple of shims in there to shift it a little bit. Prop it on the other side if you're trying to push this back in while you put a rivet or a bolt in. But that big piece, that's a giant square. So why not use it? I don't know why it took me so long this is my 10th Smyth Performance build. Why did it take me 10 builds to figure that? Well, 8 builds, because I figured it out on the last one. But anyway, okay. So that was tip number 1. Idea / tip number 2 has to do with our B-pillar. So this is really an interior thing. So this is the lower B-pillar cover. Under that sheet is the driver's seat, right? And here's the B-pillar. I talked in the wiring diagram about how I'm bringing the wiring up the B-pillar instead of the C-pillar, so that's a whole nother subject. But, so there's a couple of things here. One, this little curve right here, right? We're gonna have to trim that plastic off. So mocking it up and marking it. Oh, I bumped the plug, stand by. There we go, got our light back. So mocking up and marking it. Stop bumping that plug. Sorry about this. Technical difficulty, stand by. Jeez. All right, hopefully that'll hold. Before you put the upper B-pillar brace on here, it's a whole lot easier to stick your head down there and work. So when you're getting ready to put this in, remember to mark that off, because we're gonna have to trim that off, the B-pillar, and then the upper B-pillar brace is gonna go here, and then we're gonna have to fill this. I haven't solved that one yet. So, but the flange, so the B-pillar covers, let me show you how the front goes, and you may already know this. It gets held in, sticking in the groove in the door seal, right? So that's what holds the B-pillar in. Okay, that's fantastic, except for on this side, we no longer have a seal to hold it. So we're looking for something to hold it in. So I gotta pop it out. I worked out a little system that seems to be working as I'm mocking it up here and playing with it. When I bolt the sidewalls in, I did a stack of washers on these 1032s. And you can see I just did 3 of them there, and that seems to be enough. That edge here almost lines up with the edge of the flange, which is where that B-pillar cover wants to be normally. So I'm gonna zoom back out and look in a box of screws and show you what I used. All right, those screws are 1032s that come with the kit, but of course, when you add a couple of washers, the ones in the kit are too short. So I bought, and I am using more than the kit recommends anyway, because I'm bolting it together a little more heavy duty. But this doesn't look that substantial, but the shear strength on these is higher than aluminum pop rivets. So that's why I'm using more of these than necessarily recommended. It's not going to hurt anything. Maybe it makes the car a touch heavier, but anyway. So I bought, now I can't remember. I believe those are 1.5 inch. No, those are inch longs. Okay, so a bunch of inch long 1032s, and then some number 10 normal flat washers. I generally buy stainless steel stuff when I can, but you do got to be careful. Stainless into the aluminum wants to electrolysis, I think they call it, the dissimilar metal corrosion. So you can put a little anti-seize on it. That really helps. If you do any boat or jet ski work, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And they didn't have number 10 fender washers, and I got this at, I think I got this at Ace. They didn't have them in number 10s, but the 3/16 work out perfectly. So 3/16 by 1, and there happens to be 7 of them in the package. I'm going to do 3 on each side, so that's going to work out just right. Here, it's hard to do one-handed while I'm holding the camera, but I think you will get my drift here. And 3 of the smaller washers seems to be the trick, dimension-wise. So I'm doing that before I put this through the bed wall and through the flange, and then another washer and the nut on the outside. And I did use the aircraft nuts, the ones with the nylon insert in them that came with the kit. They didn't have any over at Ace today, so this kit came with normal nuts. So I'm using the aircraft nuts that came with the kit. So now you can see exactly what those are all about. There we go. So you can see that that fender washer here stands up a little bit and gives that lip on the B-pillar cover something to grab onto. Now, if you do those when you're putting the bed together, you're not going backwards and taking stuff apart and going back and doing it. And that's why I'm bringing it up now. So that was item number 1. I am gonna take just a sec here. Oh, and if you watch the wiring diagram here, you can see that's the pigtail that I soldered in that was from the C-pillar. And it comes up, and here's a idea number, we on 3? I think we're on 3. So that harness is a little bit out of position from where it normally sits, but that's fine. But what happens is you have one lead here for a dome light. Well, it ends up laying really close. Let me zoom back out. Really close to the top of the bed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that lead to power my lights that I'm putting under this rail. I'm going to glue a strip of LEDs up underneath there. So let me see if I can do this. Pan around up under, let's see if you can see up under this lip. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Somewhere up in here, I'll drill a little hole with a grommet and slide those. I'll end up using 2 of those wires. Slide those through the grommet and connect those to my LED. So when you open the door, the bed light underneath this rail will come on. And I've done that on other cars. It comes out pretty cool. The qualifier here, and this is what I mentioned before, is that I don't know, I haven't figured out how this system works in a Jeep. It has 3 leads coming, 2 of the leads are constant hot, and it's not a switched ground. In the VWs, the ground wire is switched, so when you open the door, it connects the ground, and then the power wire powers it. This is a little bit different system. I haven't figured it out yet, so I can't give you the answer on which of those 2 wires you're gonna hook to your LEDs. But I'll figure it out and hopefully update everybody later. Okay, while we're here, so remember when you took the door off, you unplugged that from the rear doors. Well, if you pull that harness apart a little bit, you'll see that one of the sets of wires is twisted together like that. That's your speaker wires. In this case, it's the left rear speakers. So I am going to cut those 2 wires off at the connector here, and then trim all these other wires back so I don't have wires to deal with, and waterproof the tips and tuck them away under the carpet or something. And then that's the lead I'm gonna use for my speakers, because I'd like to put a set of speakers in here for Ken. I have a couple ideas about speakers. One of the cool things, if I can tip this back up and get it close, doesn't have to be. Now looking at this, let me see if I can hold the camera out this way and not blind us with light. Oh, and by the way, the kind of the rear door sill, perfect. You don't have to cut anything. There's a little pop fitting back here. I broke it, but I can get a new one, pop it in there, and so that'll help hold it in too. And then everything, you don't have to alter anything. It's really cool. So now for speakers, so you could cut a speaker hole right here, or you can see where the inner fender well goes from those bolts, if I can zoom back out enough. So you could cut a speaker hole here. Speaker. So I'm gonna try on this one doing a surface mount with one of these. So I've got this thing. I bought them to play with on the Beetle and then decided I didn't really want to use them in the Beetle. And basically you cut a hole here to mount your 6-inch speaker or 6.5, and then you bolt the flange down. So I'm planning on building, or cutting up some interior panels. After I put some soundproofing on this wall, I'll do a layer of the kind of dyno mat, that rattle trap stuff, and then a layer of sound absorbing foam on top of that, and then a little panel that I'll cover in vinyl to make it look, kind of nice. And then I can take this guy and mount it something like that. If I can get it to here, when I rivet or bolt down the rear window surround, I'm going to put a piece of 3/4 by 3/4 aluminum angle sticking down here to give me something to catch and hold the top of my interior panel. So I need to figure out how thick everything's going to be so I know how far out to bring it. But I'll just use a little piece of aluminum angle that comes out and down so that you can stick that panel up underneath, and then you can kind of flex it a little bit and stick it down into the crack there, or I may even have to put a couple of retainers on the plastic there. It doesn't take much to hold it, but I don't want it to flop around. So a couple ideas I'm working on. While we're in here talking about the B-pillar, I've learned from experience on other cars that covering these holes and maybe even putting some insulation in these cavities, like take this little plastic thing out and cover that hole with some rattle trap or something. Make sure you leave the holes that you need to fasten the B-pillar and you don't impede on the seat belt, right? The seat belt's gonna sit down in this cavity, so you don't want anything rubbing on the seat belt reel. But these other holes, and maybe a little bit around the edges there, you can insulate that, and that will dramatically reduce the amount of noise that comes into the cab through that B-pillar. It tends to kind of echo a little bit in here, And I'm pretty sure you'll be glad you did on the Jeep. I know on the Beetles and the Jettas, it makes a significant difference. So when you are playing with that B-pillar, go ahead and cover that with some rattle trap. Maybe put some insulation in there first. Just make sure it doesn't impede on your seatbelt reel. And the same thing as you're routing this wire harness. If you go this route, make sure that doesn't rub on the seatbelt or impede its ability to lock or any of that. So thanks for letting me bore you with my ideas. Worst case, maybe it'll, well, worst case, you wasted 15 minutes of your life. I apologize. Best case, you're like, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. And in between, maybe you'll come up with an even better idea. As I always say, if you do, put it in the comments, share it. I love the forum and the group we have. Everybody sharing their ideas and knowledge. And we just keep, the utes coming out today are awesome. People are doing all these cool, little bit different things. You know, each one I try to come up with something a little bit new, and everybody else is doing the same too. So anyway, keep sharing the ideas. Be good to each other. We'll catch you all later.